Welcome to the Archetypal Mosaic. This is Mikhail Tank. Today we have a very special guest with us today, Leslie Franks, the author of Stone Medicine, a Chinese medical guide to healing with gems and minerals. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you so much for having me.
The book is based on the teachings of Dr. Jeffrey C. Yuan, 88th generation lineage holder of the Jade Purity School of Taoism, with whom she began studying in 1995. Leslie comes from a lineage of rockhounds, starting with her great-grandfather, and her interest in using stones for healing was sparked many years ago. Leslie has worked as a body worker and clinical assistant in an acupuncture practice for more than 25 years. Her work in the clinic is heavily influenced by her more than 40-year practice in various martial arts and Qigong systems. Currently, she's a practitioner and teacher of the Chen-style Tai Chi under the direct guidance of Master Wang Haijun, 12th generation Chen Tai Chi. What a incredible biography, and what a book. I just have to start with telling the audience one quick thing. When I saw this book in a store, I was amazed, enthralled by it, because I'm very much into stones and crystals, and not just for looks, but for the incredible energy that they reflect in us and ignite us with. I personally not only believe it, but have used it. So I just want to say your book, in my opinion, is the best in the subject. So,
well, thank you. And, obviously, as you said in the bio, it is derived from Jeffrey Yuan's teaching, which comes from a very long oral tradition in Chinese medical, philosophical tradition, and I'm the scribe. I'm not the master, but I'm the scribe, and I really loved doing the book. It was a wonderful experience.
Tell me, before we begin with specific questions about the book, when you say you were a scribe in a way, how did this process take place? Where were you during all of these teachings? Were you in this country? And Dr. Jeffrey Yuan, how did he gather all of this information? Did he do research, or was it also, generational? Can you explain the process?
He based his teaching on his own clinical experience, but he's a great scholar of classical Chinese medicine, and there are a few classical materia medicas. One is called the Divine Farmer's Materia Medica, and the Shenong. And then there was a great naturalist, Li Shizhen, who wandered China gathering data about healing substances and trying to disprove superstition and prove validity. He's the first one who made a distinction between purple fluorite and amethyst. This was back, I think, in the 1100s, and and fluorite they have a lot of fluorite in China, and so he called amethyst the true purple stone, and fluorite is the false purple stone. At any rate, so there are those written sources, but also there's a man in Jeffrey's lineage way back named Gahong, who was one of the very first practitioners to write about doing alchemical practice with stones, both external and internal. Internal being the effort you make through body and mind. External is taking a substance from the outside and ingesting it and trying to transmute the coarse, base nature of our being into something more sublime and beautiful. So he has the oral tradition that comes from before the Common Era, and he's got 88 generations of it. And then he's got the sources, and then he has his own clinical experience. He has said that stones, of all the modalities he teaches, stones are closest to his heart. So where I took the class was in New York. He travels the Western world a great deal teaching, and he used to teach very consistently in New York. That is, he's now spread out a little further. But that was a year-long class, which, she'd go once a month for a weekend, and I typed real fast. So I took good notes.
You sure did. And not only notes, but you've added a tremendous amount of, or you polished the book, or you just made a beautiful book. Let me just say a couple of things. This show is not meant to treat or diagnose. It's meant for informational, entertainment, and reflective purposes. And about Amethyst, one of my top 3 favorite stones, it's a stone of purity, the myth of Dionysus, of anti-alcoholism. It's a stone known as the stone of chastity, but worn by priests, and in the Old Testament in the breastplate of Kohanim. So it's a stone that derives from at least 5,000 to 7,000 years ago from our just direct knowledge. What about in Chinese medicine? If we were just to concentrate, I know that fluorite has a little bit of toxicity, correct?
Yeah. Well, first I'll talk about the amethyst. In Chinese medicine, it clears heat in the liver. What you get when you drink is heat in the liver, in liver blood. Liver blood gets hot if you drink a lot of alcohol, and amethyst clears it. So there is also a recognition that it will help with drunkenness by clearing the toxicity more quickly by clearing heat in liver blood. This is maybe the language is a little difficult, but I will say that in the book, the primer describes all of these things that I'm saying, the liver blood and whatnot. Fluorite, because of the fluoride content, again, I think that there's in the West, there's not such a codified system of understanding the stones, but there's Michael, I don't know how to say his name, Geiger, has actually done research with a group of people. They just practice with each other and they report their findings. They maintain that fluoride melts things. It melts pathology. What happens from a Chinese medicine point of view is there's a quality of energy that's all about interaction with the external environment. And if you have something that's toxic, that energy is going to mobilize to whether you're holding something or wearing something or drinking something, and it's going to come break up. It's also going to come melt pathology. The trick with fluorite and other stones that are the halide stones that contain halogen minerals, metals, is that it's kind of confusing. Sometimes it helps melt things, sometimes it brings things deeply into the anatomy to keep it quiet. Purple fluorite has that dark color. The dark color resonates with a deeper part of the anatomy, and so it might melt something that's on the superficial or intermediate level of energetic function and bring it in more deeply. Whereas a green fluoride or a clear fluoride is just going to help release it, especially if you're holding it or putting it on a site of pain or something like that.
Very, very, very specific information. Thank you. Dear audience, please note not to drink any stones for sure. Just read the book. Read the book to understand what we're discussing. What makes this book on stones different from the others on the market?
Well, it's the Chinese medical take on things. Chinese philosophy is a very cohesive, all-inclusive understanding of how the world works. And so you put the stones into that context, and it just helps make choices better. you can look at the color and understand it from the 5-element system of Chinese philosophy. You can also understand that from the chakra system of the Ayurvedic medicine, or any other system that you resonate with. But it's the systematic looking of things. I particularly loved the crystal structure aspect. Jeffrey wanted to make the stone medicine, more relevant to a Western, perhaps professional, but not necessarily audience. And so he included crystal structure and chemical composition as very important methods of distinguishing stones. And so you put the crystal structure into the sacred geometry system of Taoism, of the 5-element system, whatever, and you just learn so much. Because you have to sort of study the 5-element system first: wood, fire, earth, metal, water. But you start with the circle, the sphere. That's representing wholeness. That's representing perfection, and it does not exist in the material world. You know, our globe is slightly egg-shaped. Nothing is a perfect sphere here. Even a molecule, it might for a split second be a perfect sphere, but it's changing. It's moving all the time because we are in a physical reality, and it can't be perfect because you're constantly being assaulted by things. That sounded offensive, but I mean, as opposed to defensive. Sorry.
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, talk about protection, and you've brought up some very important things. I just want to bounce off of. You said 5 elements here in our current consciousness. We're aware of the 4 usually: fire, earth, water, air. You've brought up wood. Can you describe how is wood? What is a wood personality, and also how is wood one of the 5 elements, and why is it not a part of the current 4? Like the.
Well, okay. The whole Chinese system, the philosophical system, went through many, many shifts and changes. And there was a time when it had 4 directions, whatever, and then it just kept evolving and changing. 5-element became a dominant understanding, but it certainly isn't the only one. When you talk about wood, you're talking about trees that grow straight into the sky. You're talking about the quality of energy that comes with the spring when the seeds in the earth gather a tremendous amount of energy to make the alchemical change from buried in the soil, cold and dormant, to pushing up through with their sprouts. So wood is about moving up and forward. It knows where it's going. It has a goal. A tree doesn't grow all the way to heaven. It grows as high as its genetics say it will grow. So wood people have goals. They see where they're going. The wood element is associated with the liver in Chinese medicine. The liver is associated with the eyes. So when you see where you're going, you know how you're going to get there. You try to go from point A to point B as quickly and efficiently as possible. If you're thwarted in that, it's going to be frustrating. Frustration is one of the emotions associated with the wood element. Anger, in a more extreme form, is associated with the wood element. So if you can't accomplish what it is that you need to accomplish, you may tend toward anger. Let's see, what else about the wood type?
What about
go ahead.
Which stones, maybe top 2 or 3 stones, help the wood personality achieve its goals through the anger, and how do they use those stones?
Okay. The wood element is associated with the color green. So the first thing you're going to do is look for a green stone. Amazonite, aventurine, green garnet maybe. But you also are going to look for a hexagonal crystal structure because the hexagon is the closest thing to fill the full circle, and it's associated with wood. Water nourishes wood. Wood grows, but it's unable to fill the full circle. How to say it? The perfect stone is emerald because it's green and it has a hexagonal crystal structure. But it's expensive. And very few people are all one thing. So if you have a lot of wood, but you also have metal's gonna get in the way of that wood. It's gonna try to cut it. So what you may need to do is find a stone that, let's see, what would you do? If you calmed down metal, if you really nourished metal, it may come away from trying to interfere with wood. Metal is all about organization. So whereas the wood person sees where they want to go, the metal person says, oh, but we have to be very organized before we start. We can't start that trip until everything is packed perfectly. So if you, it's not that clear.
No, it's very clear. You're basically saying there's like a leading and a supporting in different cases and scenarios, and you may need several stones to help in that process, right?
Yes, because if you were wearing an emerald, and because you wanted to support your wood energy, and it's supporting your wood energy a lot, but you've got strong metal energy too, boy, that emerald is going to really challenge you. And it's going to...
And how do you, for example, when you use the emerald, or can it be a jade since it's green? And also, how would you use that stone? Do you wear it so it touches your skin, or do you make sure that there's a hole underneath the ring so that there's energy moving? Or what are some of the ways to actually use stones? And for those people who don't know how to, let's say, energize a stone, to make the stone a part of their aura, their energy, as opposed to just kind of an independent resource, how do you actually activate it?
Whenever you buy a new stone, you have to cleanse it because you don't know where it's been. You don't know who's been touching it. It may have that white goopy stuff that you get at the mineral shows or whatever. So first you have to wash it. Just wash it. And then the standard way in this book is that you cleanse it with water. That I put it in a cup, fill the cup, and then I slowly let the water drip into the cup for an hour. If it's a hard stone, if it's a soft stone, not. And that kind of, you see the exchange of energy happening. When the bubbles form on the stone, that's an exchange of energy that the water is pulling stuff out. And then it becomes empty then, this stone. Granted, it still has its chemical composition, its color, its crystal structure, but energetically it's empty. It's ready to receive whatever you want to give it. Different stones respond to different ways of recharging them. Sometimes if you just hold it and put your very strong intention into the stone, that you just, put your mind into that stone, this is what I want this stone to help me do. That's if it's going to be more for the intentional aspect, for working on your constitution, which is what you're talking about when you're asking about a wood personality type. If you're working more for physical health, you might want to put the stone on a piece of hematite, which is iron oxide. Iron is very nourishing for the blood, and so especially stones that are good to nourish blood, you would put it on the hematite, leave it for 24 hours, and it's been nourished. It's been fed by my opinion of hematite. It's the Earth Mother. I just love hematite. Then other stones may not have such a good somebody with the hematite, but maybe you put it in the sun, like a meteorite. You could put it in the sun, and it's going to take in all that yang energy from the sun and get all charged up. Some stones would do better in the moonlight. Pearls and gentle stones, sweet moonstone, just gentle, sweet stones do better in starlight, moonlight. And some stones like to be buried in the soil. And actually, I think jade is one that, if you're fortunate enough to have a garden, I think putting it into the earth and letting the earth both take out and put in. Jade is a stone that has to be cleansed very, very, very well, because a lot of the jade that's on the market is really old, has been owned by multiple people, and has taken on who knows what. So you have to really cleanse it well.
This is fantastic. You're using the different properties of the earth to clean. I wasn't familiar with burying. I was familiar with moon, sun, water, but not the burying. What about salt, rice, and also, what are the different? I know there's so many questions. It's my mind is just going here and there. This is such an exciting topic. Tell me about salt and rice and any other way to cleanse. Then the next thing is, how does the stone work for the person? Does it have to touch the skin? And then the third part is nephrite and jadeite. What are the main differences in healing wise?
Okay. Because I'm remembering it right this minute. If you're wearing the stone, it's always best if it touches your skin, unless you're doing an intentional thing and you want to show the world what you're doing. If this is about affirmation that I am accomplishing something, you wear that to touch your skin, and it's for you. It's not for the world. But if you're trying to attract something, and I'll be honest, at this moment I am wearing labradorite because it helps me be less shy and a little more voluble. But I'm wearing that outside because the light catches it, and it just does something. It changes something. So wearing it on the skin, having if it's for yourself, if it's for your physical health, if it's for your own personal, I'm anointing myself to do something, and it's for me. It's not for the world. Then all that goes inside. Then there are bracelets and rings. The bracelets should touch the skin. The rings should indeed have the hole in the setting so that light can pass through. The Ayurvedic actually like to have the stone actually touching the skin. So they cut it specially so that point isn't too sharp on the skin. So that's that. What was the first one?
The first one was the salt and the rice, and then the nephrite and the jadeite. Yeah.
Okay. The salt, I use salt when it's a really tough stone, and I use salt when the stone contains sodium. So sodalite and lapis, because sea salt has many minerals in it. If you're using table salt, that's sodium chloride, and the chloride's pretty caustic. It's pretty harsh. And so I just kind of shy away from salt, and I rarely use salt water. I will put a sodalite in the middle of a bed of salt. If I want to use salt, and it's not a sodalite or a lapis or another sodium-containing stone, I will put that in a clear glass bowl in the salt. And it's gentler that way. And I haven't heard of rice.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I've heard of rice. I think it was in one of the magic books, and it was pretty interesting. I was wondering why, but it seems to neutralize things.
Well, especially, I don't know. I don't know.
Always something new. Now, what about jadeite and nephrite in terms of their differences in terms of healing and history?
Well, you really want the history?
Just a bit.
Jade is held in tremendously high regard by the Chinese, and in their region, it has been mined for a very, very long time. The Neolithic people mined it, and they made very sophisticated ritual objects and tools with it. It's a little brittle, so it's maybe not as practical for real, honest-to-goodness work. And then it was the Emperor Qianlong who discovered the jade from Burma, the jadeite, and the colors were so amazing, and he became totally obsessed with it and had his armies brave headhunters and malarial swamps and all that to try to find the stones, and they made amazing things with them. And I think it was really the color that was so attractive to him, and at any rate, it pretty much destroyed the empire because he spent so much money on it. From a healing point of view, from a Chinese medical point of view, I will say that the jade it's an aspirational stone. It's not so much about physical health, although it does have some like green jade nourishes blood, and it helps with neurological conditions and gynecological conditions. But for the most part, you would look to the jades as a way to transform yourself, and they come at the end of a process of transformation. Another part of this book, because the stones are going through continual evolution, they are changing all the time because the planet's changing all the time. And there's one group in particular, the transformative stones, that are the agates, chalcedonies, jaspers, and the jade is included in that, but it's the end. So you initiate change with agate, you go through purification with jasper, you go through refinement with chalcedony, and then you come to completion with jade. So you're not really, at that point in a process, you're not really even thinking so much about your physical health. You're thinking about how can I bring what I have just accomplished into the world and make a difference for other human beings. So,
beautiful.
In my opinion, that's what the jade is about. And I personally don't use the jade from Burma because I told you this in another conversation. There's a book called The Stone of Heaven by some investigative journalists, and it may have changed now because I know the government has changed in Myanmar, but there was a terrible, terrible time with jade mining, and so I didn't want to support that, so I don't use it.
Beautiful. Let me just ask you a few more questions on this topic. This is so interesting. How does one become one with the stone? So you can wear it, you can charge it. Is there any other way to have the stone near you, but to feel that it's million years of formation and its color and whatever it has inside of it, the properties, that they can really become a part of you at that moment? How do you activate it momentarily? Like, you need the power of this stone at this moment. Is there a way to do something like that?
Sure. Quartz crystals in particular seem to have the ability to store information. And so if you've taken the time once to really put your affirmation, your prayer, your whatever it is into that stone, if you're in a situation where you can, if you just reach out and touch it, it's going to have that effect. For that matter, I think if you just think about it, I mean, it's you've already done the work, and the stone is continuing to do the work because it has that information. So that sounds a little like magical thinking maybe, but these stones are really kind of amazing. I couldn't have done this book if it hadn't been for the stones. They really, really affected me.
Yeah, how did the stones help you working on the book?
Well, every entry, I tried to make friends with that particular stone. Some of them were just, some of them I just didn't. You know, they're in the book and all the properties are there, but I just couldn't resonate with the stone. Others, I would sleep with the stone in my right hand. I like small spheres or small rough pieces that are comfortable to hold. And one time I was using lepidolite, which is a mica that has a pinkish cast because it has lithium in it. And I had been sleeping with that for a while, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and just, you know, I just started realizing I was putting a lot more attention on working on the book and much less time spent with my husband. So I was pulling out habitual behaviors, you know, because I try to make everybody happy. And it was just kind of, well, this is curious. And then as I continued working on the entry for lepidolite, I found that Jeffrey had said that it was good for working on codependency. And it did that. And then because of the cubic structure, I started wearing garnet. And garnet also has a lot of iron, so it's very nourishing to the blood. And the cubic structure is very helpful for boundaries. And my boundaries got so strong, just nothing got in the way anymore. And then I was wearing moldavite all the time, moldavite earrings, and it felt like that kept me tuned in. So the balance of the garnet with its cubic crystal structure for the boundaries, and then the moldavite that seemed to be tuning me into some different quality of consciousness. At any rate, so, you know, they just, and then I don't know, it sounds kind of strange, but it was like something really wanted this to happen, and it did. Yeah,
it shows. The book has 5-star reviews solely because it's so useful and helpful. There are so many people who I would consider to be on a scale of cynicism. They say things to me such as, well, it's because you believe in the stone that it helps you. It doesn't matter which stone, it doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't matter if it's real or fake, it's just because you believe in it. So I tell them that's completely inaccurate, because if it's for example a lab created stone, it contains nothing for me. I can't feel anything. If it's a quality stone, it contains the energy of its creation. It contains like you said, it's like an energy or a message. I did this program in Japan called soul photography, which is about capturing energy, restore points to come and re-access them, and you've brought that up in a very interesting way with these stones. I want to ask you, what would you tell the cynics who consider that stones are just a form of, self...
Yes. Yes. I would say everything, and it's going to sound a little simplistic when I start it, but everything is energy. Everything is interaction. Everything is, you can't be in this, everything is energy. And so, yeah, we've got this solid body, but it's not solid. It's filled with water, and it's filled with space. And so the molecules are continually changing. One of the other amazing things I thought as I worked on the book, and I had known it intellectually, but I got it differently. You know, Our bone is continually breaking down and being made again. And they say every 7 years, every cell in your body has been replaced. Well, if all of these cells are replacing themselves, they're replacing themselves with themselves. But if you introduce another agent that is a color or a shape or a quality of energy, because, hey, a piece of obsidian that was once a part of the magma of the earth that has been thrown into the atmosphere, whereas it's cooled off so quickly it can't have a crystal structure, that has a really different energy than, primordial ooze that has been solidified at the bottom of an ocean for God knows how long, and now you have flint, the sedimentary variety of flint. So anybody can see that those differences, surely that carries a different quality. So I would say that remember that you're constantly being remade. We are not cast in stone, and that if you're just wearing jewelry, that's simple. But if somebody has knowledge of acupuncture point theory and stuff like that, and you take stones to points, and you're introducing, say, okay, so there are points on the spleen and liver channel that deal with blood. If you take a stone that's high in iron content and apply it to a point that is known to nourish the blood, of course it's going to bring more. It's going to nourish that blood more than an acupuncture needle, because the acupuncture needle is just attracting energy. This is actually giving substance, iron, into that point because of the interaction of the, nothing exists by itself. Everything's moving. Mm-hmm. So, at any rate.
That's fantastic. Beautifully said. Beautifully. What about lab-created things? Does it work similarly, or to me it's kind of useless? How do you feel about it?
Well, I kind of agree. I mean, it's like an empty stone, I think. Mm-hmm. That it's got the crystal structure and it's got the color, but it was raised in a very bland environment. And so it just doesn't have the character that a stone from nature has.
Beautifully said. What about safety? Now, there's some stones, fibrous materials, such as tiger's eye, which contains a form of asbestos, and other soft minerals, including serpentine, I believe, and some other materials which in some ways can be toxic. Should one just abstain from those? I mean, I see a lot of people wearing a tiger's eye or even malachite, which is one of my favorites, but in different forms. They are either toxic or non-toxic. As far as I know, when they're made into a jewelry piece and not submerged in water, sometimes they're okay, but some of those fibrous ones could even be pyrite. Can you describe the handling of those, the charging of those, and what's better to just stay away from?
I think in moderation. Well, first of all, with the tiger's eye, the real risk is to the person cutting and polishing the stone.
Okay.
Because the dust of the asbestos comes into the air and you inhale it, and so that's not good. But in stone form, by the time it's been polished, it's pretty solid.
Okay.
I've cleansed tiger eye in water, and I haven't seen any problem happening with it. Malachite. I love malachite too. It's hydrated copper carbonate, and so the copper content. I would not ever personally use malachite in an elixir. Mm-hmm. Because of the copper content. There are very advanced practitioners might, but it would be extremely diluted. And I would not wear long-term the malachite because it's very sort of grandiose. It's going to start asserting itself really strongly. The copper is very conductive for chi. The water's very conductive for chi, and it's great for short-term use. One of the ways of categorizing the stones is what level of formation. Is it sedimentary, metamorphic, igneous? And malachite is sedimentary, but it has copper, so I included it actually in the middle section for related to blood of the materia medica. But when a stone is sedimentary, it's usually fairly soft, and it's usually for short-term use. So I have a stick of malachite that if I have cramps in my legs at night, I rub it with the stick of malachite. It's like amazing. It just goes away.
Wow, you mean like Charlie horses kind of thing?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So it has a lot of potassium in it. Or something.
What was that?
I know potassium helps with that. Does malachite have potassium too?
No, but it's the copper that's moving things so much.
That is great information. Thank you.
And it's a sedimentary, because it's sedimentary, it's going to have a more obvious effect on the external anatomy of the body, also the deeper.
And, about...
pyrite, you said. Pyrite. Pyrite is, it's depending on where it comes from, and I can't really tell you. I think it just... Some of it's very sturdy, and other isn't. It can like explode if it has exposure to humidity. I read a story online about a museum in Spain, and some guy came in, and the display case that had pyrite in it, everything had just like fallen apart during the night, and so. Something must have happened to the seal of the case or something, and moisture got in, and other pyrite works fine. I have a pyrite massage wand, and I go into the hot water faucet, and I run hot water on it, and I get it really hot. Of course, pyrite has sulfur in it, so energetically it's hot too, or at least warm, and then with the hot water, and I go in and I massage people's backs with it, and they just love it. It's just heaven for them. But it depends on the stone, because some of them are just powdery, and you can't expose them to water at all.
Wow. About malachite, that's exactly how I felt about it too. When I put it on, this was many, many years ago, and several times, it was just like, whoa, everything that I wished for, it just came immediately. And then if I kept it there, it's like it would be like a flood, and I'd be overwhelmed, so I had to take it off. That is so accurate. And malachite is so powerful, but you got to use it just sometimes. I so agree with you on this. It's amazing. It's amazing that my natural, experiences and what you're written in the book, they match, and it's like it's confirmation. It's really special for me to know that your work is so valuable, because your book it just has so much information that I've never heard of, and of course many people haven't, and it has a lot of, aside from just stones, it deals with, like you said, the elements that you've described, the personalities, the different energies. There's just a lot of history there too, so audience, check out this book. Now, what about turquoise? Do you use that? How does it help you?
Oh, I don't have that much of a relationship to turquoise. I guess I've been a little soured on it, because I know that so much of what's out there that they're trying to sell as turquoise is really just dyed howlite, and I know that most turquoise, even if it's genuine, has been worked on one way or another, because it's kind of a fragile stone. I did just buy a string of beads when I was out west this last summer. It's nourishing for the fluids. It also has the copper, so it's also going to be conductive for chi. If it's real, it's nice for menopausal women because it's just nourishing that way. But I don't have a huge relationship with turquoise. Alas.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Turquoise is one of the Capricornian stones, and I'm a double Capricorn. But, even though I wear turquoise sometimes, and I have some Sleeping Beauty, which is real, it's still, I still feel stronger from my other three favorite stones, which I'll bring up later so we can discuss them briefly. Let me ask you a few more questions now. So the difference of the New Age intuitive description stones from your book. I have to tell you, your book has so much more depth than the New Agey books. Can you describe?
Well, I think the major difference is that indeed Chinese medicine has worked with this for such a long time. So we have thousands of years of experience and observation and empirical data. Surprisingly, when you go into the New Age shop and you look at the descriptions of the stones, there's a lot of agreement, just like you have found with your own experience, that the malachite is a little overbearing. Once you wear it a little while, it's great, and then no more. Thank you very much. You discover these things. It's the truth. It's just that the Chinese medicine has had a much longer time to discover and codify and analyze and assess and judge and all of that stuff. And I think that's where you get the more detail. One of my problems with a lot of the New Age books is that it all starts kind of sounding the same. You don't know what to use for what. You know that you're... The other thing about the New Age stuff is that it's mostly for spiritual enhancement, whereas this book includes real things for real physical conditions. Even it may be as simple as a muscle cramp in the leg, and you rub it with malachite, but it's so effective and it lasts all night. It's wonderful. And calcite is one in drinking water that's pretty much completely safe. And I used to have a chronic dry cough, and I started just I had the calcite in my glass, and I drank water, and the cough went away, almost really fast. So for physical stuff, the Chinese medicine has a lot more to say than the New Age folk. But this information is out there, It's nobody owns it. Every culture across the planet has had relationships with stones. It's just that in the West we kind of lost that, except for Native Americans and other shamanic traditions. But in Western Europe, certainly, there was not a huge... Well, maybe there was. The Greeks were doing that, but that's still pretty early. We just kind of lost it. The Dark Ages.
Because we live in a time of everything has to be proven and visible, and to me it's a sad shame, because it's like there's so much stuff, including energy and the creative beings and all of this stuff that's not tangible to our limited senses, and people who just live with their limited senses. To me, it's slightly tragic. Tell me, let me ask you this. Now, about drinking with calcite, of course, the audience, again, I'm telling you, it may sound slightly unclear, so please read the book before you do anything like that. But you definitely don't want to drink the stone. You want to drink the water from... Oh, dear. Yes, indeed. Because you never know. You never know.
Unfortunately, stones are heavy and they drop to the bottom. Sorry.
But still, definitely read the book to get that information from exactly what to do and if that's the right thing or not. Consult with your doctors. Now, how do the stones affect the psyche? What psychological conditions are addressed by stone medicine, and what is the mechanism by which the stones have their effect?
There's a whole thing that's it's in alternative medicine all over the place. The law of signature. If something has a particular quality, it conveys that quality. So a kidney bean, because it looks like a kidney, affects the kidneys. In stone medicine, one of the major attributes of stones is that they're heavy, they're dense, they weigh things down. So, especially if somebody is anxious or manic, a stone is going to bring that energy down. And I'm not saying that it's going to cure you, but you can sometimes really calm down quickly for, in a fairly short time, depending on what you're using. For depression, lepidolite again. Lepidolite is a mica with its leaves, it's like the pages in a book. And that signature is, with those layers, you work through your layers and gradually release the baggage that you carry around with you. The stone name in Chinese medicine is that which lifts up heaviness stone, which is sort of talking that it's pulling things up from a deeper level of your energetic being up to the surface to become conscious of it. That's going to, that which lifts up heaviness stone, and you go into the New Age shop and they say it's for depression. Other stones that might be good for depression would be sunstone, because it's got the sparkles and it's a very optimistic stone, and citrine, which of the quartz crystals is the most young, it's the most active and the most outgoing of the quartz crystals. So different stones, different effects. But if somebody is in shock, you could take a piece of obsidian and put it in their hand and close their hand and squeeze it. And it's going to, because obsidian came from deep within the earth and was thrown into the air, the obsidian pulls energy from deep inside your body. If it's on your hand, in your hand, it pulls it out to the hand. And then, because shock is, everything's trapped. Everything's like frozen inside. It's, you can't function. And the obsidian's quite hot energetically, warm energetically. It was, after all, molten. And now I've actually been holding it lately, and it's black, and it doesn't really get hot. It gets a little warm, but it just is. Its energy is hot. So my heat is nothing in comparison to what it once knew.
A couple of more specific things about what you're talking about. What about things for moon and protection?
For me, the most beneficial stone for protection is black tourmaline. Black tourmaline, it affects the external level of energy, which is the one that's all about interaction with the external environment. And at the same time, it's black, so it resonates with a very deep quality of energy. It brings your own inner strength up to the surface so that you can deal with the world. So there's black tourmaline and there's smoky quartz. I don't make the differentiation of what is a problem, whether it's people or changes of weather or moon cycles or whatever. If you're having a hard time with the external environment, then black tourmaline. And then the smoky quartz to harmonize it, because black tourmaline's pretty strong. And so the quartz will kind of soften its effect. And the smoky, because it's dark, also resonates with a deep part of yourself, and then just offers strength to its strength to the tourmaline too.
Beautiful. Lapis contains pyrite. Do you think that kind of connection between the lapis and the pyrite is strong, or is it weak? And also, what is that good for?
I love lapis. And I didn't quite understand your question about the strength, strong or weak. What did you ask?
I remember when we spoke about pyrite earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that sometimes pyrite can be strong or sometimes it's weak. And I'm wondering, when it's part of lapis, all the little gold flakes in lapis are pyrite, is it strong or weak then?
It's fine. It's strong. It's not a problem. Lapis is a rock. It has been, it's a whole conglomeration of stuff. And it's pretty solid, so you don't have to worry about the pyrite in that. And lapis is, from a Chinese medical point of view, it's very nourishing to liver blood. It's funny, when I first started really working with this stuff, every night I would go to bed and I would put a different stone at the bottoms of my feet. And, well, not every night. Every night I did it, but I chose 3 stones. I had hematite, which is very grounding and iron and nourishing, and I had, oh dear, I can't remember one of them, and then one of them was lapis. And the hematite felt very jazzy, it was like fizzy, sort of. And the lapis felt soft. Even though it was a hard rock, it still felt soft. And so it's so sweet and nourishing and beautiful, and so, at any rate.
Beautiful. And then what about jet and diamond? Now, are they related because of the graphite or the carbon?
Yeah, they're the same chemical composition. It's just that the diamond has had such intense pressure associated, it has been transmuted because of the pressure and the heat. The heat. Go ahead.
Are they similar in their benefit, and what are those benefits of the jet and the diamond?
No, they aren't similar in their benefit. Jet is going to work on this more superficial level of energy. It sort of helps you. It's a wonderful massage tool. If you sense a place that is deficient in energy, you can use the jet to stimulate the energy to come to it. It's black, and so black absorbs heat, absorbs light, and if there's a place that is inflamed, whether it's a skin condition or a muscular condition, you can put the jet on it, and it's going to help pull the heat out of the body. The diamond, on the other hand, has had that. It's transparent. It's not opaque. Light passes through it. And it's so incredibly hard. It's the hardest stone. The Chinese didn't much like the diamond because they thought it was too hard, that it didn't allow for movement, that it wasn't resilient. And so it's a stone for completion, that you've now done a huge amount of work on yourself, and you can wear the diamond and say, I can bring my light into the world. But if you haven't done the work, it can make you feel pretty, invulnerable. I'm fabulous now. And you're not.
Yeah.
So it can have some drawbacks if you haven't done the work.
Interesting. A few more. Ruby.
Ruby's very young. It's because of its red color. Because of its red color, it has association with the blood. It's warming, and so it's gonna move the blood. Yang is about movement, and energy. The kind of energy of being able to live your life. That kind of energy. So, and whenever you get into those hard gemstones, those are the ones that are going to be most valuable for the working on your temperament. The temperament is the hardest level to change. You know, we can pay attention to our moods and our emotions, we can become more conscious of, but our temperament, it's what we were born with, it's our astrological signs, it's all that stuff. It's very difficult. So if you want to either affirm or challenge your constitutional temperament, the hard gemstones are the best for that. So I would say if you have a problem, I'm making this up as I speak, if you have a problem with Mars in your chart, you might want to cultivate a relationship with Ruby. Maybe it would help you understand Mars a little better, because I'm not saying that Ruby is warlike, but Mars is a red planet.
It makes sense.
Which I just thought that.
That's brilliant.
But, it might help you understand your challenges more.
And then the last two are, what I've heard is that chromium is the element, I think, which makes both jadeite and emerald the color that it is.
And, chromium is emerald, jade, and ruby, too. I'm opening my book here. So what's the question? Oh, this is a little too scientific for me. Why the chromium turns some things red and some it has to do with how the it's a gemology thing that is maybe beyond me. Sorry.
No, that's great. And then also, lastly, specifically nephrite as opposed to jadeite, since it was used as the original jade back in the day, and there's a lot of carvings of nephrite, whether it be dragons or other things. What is the power that nephrite gave to the people originally in terms of also its carvings? How did the power translate into the body? What exactly did nephrite do all of those years before jadeite became the cute one?
Let's see. I'm going to tell you that I don't know why. I know that I'm going to read you what Lishi Jen says about jade. And this is going to be more for nephrite than for jadeite, I think. He says that jade has 5 virtues. Benevolence, because it is moistening, lustrous, and warm. Righteousness, because it has the same texture outside and inside. Wisdom, as its sound is tender and beautiful and spreads afar. Bravery, as it does not bend even if it has to be broken, and purity, as it is clean and clear. So they, in working with this stone, when you see it raw from the mine, have you seen a raw jade boulder?
It's kind of a dark green with black spots, no?
Well, it's just very boring. It's just a big rock. And then they cut it, and oh my goodness, the color. And then they polish it, and oh my goodness, the shine. And if it's good quality jade, and they hit 2 pieces together, it sounds like a bell. And so they just found all these qualities to it, and they loved it.
Yeah.
And it was in abundance where they were living, so they felt as though it was a gift from the earth to them.
Beautiful.
So,
well, this is wonderful, and the piece that you just read comes from Leslie's book, our guest today, called Stone Medicine, A Chinese Medical Guide to Healing with Gems and Minerals. This has been a fascinating, inspirational, educational interview about one of my favorite topics in the whole world. And Leslie, you've created a book that I think will be the go-to source on the subject.
Well, thank you very much. I've had fun doing this. This was a very nice experience for me. Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we complete the show?
Leave no stone unturned.
That's a good one. Because there could be a treasure underneath and from the energy of it, right?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Is there any other plans for an additional text or any seminars?
Not at this time. I have been throwing around some ideas about some potential books, but I'm still sort of recovering from this one. This one was a big project.
How long did it take you to write this book?
8 years.
Wow.
It took a lot of discipline, and it was the garnet. It was the garnet that did it for me.
How so? And which color garnet? The red or a different color?
Red. It was the cubic crystal structure. By the end, I was feeling squeezed. I was feeling squeezed into a box, and I had to finally take the garnet off, even though I wasn't quite finished with the book, but it was far enough along that I couldn't stop. But it was just, like, kind of really amazing.
Lastly, how did the garnet make it all come along? Did it give you some kind of a bloodline?
Well, part of creativity has to come from the blood.
Yeah.
And so if you've got the iron in the garnet and it's touching the skin, and then there was the cubic crystal structure. I mean, I was closing the door on people. I just didn't have anything to do with people anymore because I couldn't. And so my boundaries became very, very strong. I went from being, I'm always trying to please people, always trying to take care of people, and I went in the total opposite direction. But it was the garnet that really pushed it that way.
And in a way, by doing this book, I think you're helping even more people for even a longer amount of time. So, I'm absolutely in adoration of your book.
Well, I'm so happy to hear it. Thank you so much.
And dear audience, yes, please go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, dear audience, I just want you to take a look at the book. It's available on Amazon and bookstores. It's a very large book, very heavy book. Is there any plans to do a paperback edition of it?
I haven't heard anything about it. When I first sent it to the publisher, I told them that I wanted it to be that when you open it, the pages stay open. Because if you are working as a massage therapist or acupuncturist or chiropractor or whatever, and you want to be researching stones, you want to just be able to leave the book open in your office and come in and check out the stone that you're thinking of and not have to be holding the book. And paperbacks don't do that very well. So the publisher was very gracious in their formatting, and I think they did an amazing job.
They did.
On this book.
They did. It's a very high quality publish. You'll see the books. The pages are crisp. The colors are clear. The book is large, and it really looks like something that belonged in a quality magical bibliothèque. So, nonetheless, I just want to again say thank you to Leslie Franks for being on the Archetypal Mosaic, and please check out this exquisite book. Leslie, thank you.
Thank you.